Hey guys, welcome to the Wilder Henson Adventures. If this is your first one, welcome. If not, welcome back. So anywho, today we're going to do something pretty simple. We're going to field strip and clean an AR-15 and get it back together and ready to shoot. It's one of the things that you should do for regular maintenance just to keep it running nice and smoothly. So let's jump into it and let's just not waste any time and get started. Alright guys, so here it is. Here's my AR-15. This is a 300 blackout. So before we actually get into tearing it all apart, let me get into some of the tools and stuff. You'll need your various oils. You choose which ones you want. I'm not going to tell you any are better than the others, because if you want to be honest, I don't know which ones are better than any of the others. I've tried several different ones, and they all seem to work. But you'll need your lubricating oils. I have a cleaning oil. I even have like a cleaning... It smells kind of like brake clean, if you want me to be 100% honest. But it's just help strip off all the extra carbon. You will need rags for cleaning. Sorry. And then patches for running through the barrel. They're just cut shirts. That's what I use, is just an old shirt that I can't wear anymore or faded out too much. And I'll use that. I'll cut it up into pieces. I have a bunch of other various tools. You don't need most of these for the AR-15 to be able to break them down. I've got them out just in case. I do have a carbon scraper, but we'll see that. What you will need a bore brush and a patch pusher for your specific caliber. Again, these are for 300 blackout, not 223. You can use a bore snake. I have one. It's actually for 223, 5.56, but we're not going to use it today. I just wanted to show you that that is an option. You also need your push rod for your barrel. So outside of that, let's get started now. So the first thing you're going to do for the AR-15 is actually push out these two pins right here. There's one there and one there. Sometimes you need a punch, especially if they're newer. You might need it. But you're going to pull them all the way out, and as soon as you do that, there we go. And there it is it's separated. So we're going to work on the lower first, so we're going to put the upper off to the side. So here's my lower. It's actually not had too many rounds through it since the last time that I cleaned it, but we're going to do it anyways. So the big thing is, you can take your cleaner, spray in there. It's really the only place I'm going to spray. And then just wipe it out. What you're wanting to do is get as much of the carbon as you possibly can off of it. And then there's some other things. Little metal shavings and whatnot can end up in there. That's just from your brass casings, everything else. So you should make sure you get down in here and you clean your sear. And down in between your safety. And then in front of your hammer as well. Oops. Now, if you're putting a lot of rounds through your AR, which you should be in order to practice, this one just hasn't because I don't run 300 all that much, is make sure your mag wells are clean too, because the more you shoot, the more that can actually build up in there too. So get all that nice and clean. Make sure you get your mag or your bolt release right here. You can get underneath it as well. Get all that underneath there. And then just overall, wipe it all down. Make sure you get all your cleaner off of it that you've sprayed on there if you're using it. Well, you can use regular oil too, by the way. If you're just using oil to get all this up, because that oil will help break down the carbon that's all on it. If you're wanting to do a really, really deep clean, pull out the buffer tube and spring. And then you can just run your rag down in here, clean it up, because carbon will get down in there as well, because that's where the bolt ends up at as it fires back. Make sure you give a good wipe down to your buffer spring and your buffer weight. Alright, and there it is. That's pretty much the lower broke down and wiped down. from here, we're just going to put a little bit of oil on a few items and move on. So your spring, take just a little bit of oil just so it's nice and slick. And then we can just drop it right back in. Just like that. Now, I learned this the hard way, but a little bit of oil goes a long way. So the big important parts to oil is your anything that moves. So the springs that move back and forth, and your safety, and then your springs for your sear as well. Just right in here. Your springs for your sear, your springs for your hammer. Another thing that doesn't hurt to have some oil, at least every once in a while, is your bolt catch, bolt release. And then your mag release as well. You can do the inside and under here. So, once you get your oil on, make sure you wipe off any excess oils. So, oils that didn't make it down into the crevices, anything like that, needs to be wiped off. Alright. And there it is. There's the lower. Lower is super, super simple, unless you're breaking way down. Here's the upper. The upper is not much more complicated, if complicated is the word you want to use, but there's just a few more moving parts to it. So, anywho, first thing we're going to do, grab your charging handle. You pull out the charging handle and the bolt. The bolt comes out, the charging handle slides out too. There's a little lock in there, or a divot, I'm sorry. There's a divot that will slide out of, and everything's open. This is as broke down as the upper goes. So the bolt can be broke down a little bit further too. So to take apart the bolt, there's a little locking pin right there on the side. You can use pliers, you can use a pick, anything like that. Pull out that little locking pin. Once you get the locking pin out, the firing pin will come out. And then after that, you can spin this little nut right here on top. It'll go sideways, and then it comes out. Gravity helps a little bit. And then the bolt comes out, and you're left with the bolt carrier. We'll set some of those things to the side. First thing we're going to do is basically spray it down again. So we're going to spray down the bolt carrier with your cleaning solutions. Now we're just going to wipe off the cleaning agent off of all of the parts that we just sprayed. Hopefully taking off all the extra carbon. The bolt itself is probably going to be one of the dirtiest things that you have, which, to be honest, it's the part that gets blown back. It's the part that catches most all the powder, burnt powder, and everything else. So, but at this point, you can use like a carbon scraper. These are nice. What that'll do is that'll get in your little crevices and get out all the little carbon. You can get as detailed into this as you want. You can even go to the point of getting, say, an ultrasonic cleaner and dropping this into that ultrasonic cleaner. Mine's not as dirty because it hasn't had as many rounds. And again, this is more of a learning video. It's still pretty dirty though. So anywho, we're gonna wipe all this down. At this point, you can check your retention on your ejector. Everything looks good. Make sure everything's good and wiped down. And the bolt body itself, or the bolt carrier. Other things that might be good to have is various brushes. You can actually see like a brush over here, and I've got some over there as well. Just soft bristled brushes, and that can help you get into some of these little crevices in here and whatnot. Like example, this one right here. So you can go in, you can scrape all this, all these little areas. Again, you can get as detailed as you want to in these cleanings. It's all up to you and your maintenance schedule. Got the inside of that cleaned out. And now we can actually start reassembling the bolt. So we're basically just going to do everything in reverse. We're going to take a little bit of oil. Oil our extractor. Just a small amount. Remember, wipe off the excess. And then this is a moving part, so the whole basically outside of the bolt needs to have just a light coat of oil. So put some on there, rub it on there, make sure it's not pooling anywhere, anything like that, and wipe off the excess. So the first thing we'll do is we'll drop that back in. So, and you'll see there's the hole that's in the bolt right there. Should line up with the outer edge of the hole in the bolt carrier. From this point, we're going to drop in the little screw. So, it's a little bit of a trick, but you get it in there and then you twist it. It's got to be sideways, like so, because the hole that's in that is what holds the firing pin. Drop the firing pin in. It should go all the way through. Once it's all the way through, you can put in the locking pin retaining clip. There we go. Now, since the bolt is also a moving part, a small thin coat of oil goes on the entire bolt carrier group as well. Rub it in. So, and one thing you can do to also test your bolt to make sure that those O-rings inside are good, if you pull the bolt out and you put it on there, it should support its own weight. If it doesn't support its own weight, then it's possible that your O-rings in here need to be replaced. But now that that's all cleaned and oiled, we'll set it off to the side. And then we're going to work on the upper and the barrel. All right, so on the upper, we're going to kind of clean the inside of here where the bolt carrier group sits. So again, I'm going to spray my cleaner in there. And then I'm going to wipe it all off. You can let it set. The longer you let it set, the more of that carbon it's going to break off. Again, this one's just not that get many rounds through it, so we're just going to get it cleaned off. Again, this is one of those you can get as in-depth as you want. You can get it as sparkly as you want, or you can just knock off the carbon and be done. So another place you're going to want to get is right inside here is the bolt chamber. Just make sure you get all the carbon out of it. I like using Q-tips in there. So there is a special tool that is available, and it's basically, they call it an AR. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got little star bristles that when you push it in here, it cleans the breech, the chamber, and the little locking lugs that are right inside here. Now that that is clean, clean the barrel. All right. So the first thing that I do is I run a bore brush through it. This is got brass bristles on it, so it's not going to scrape, it's not going to scratch, it's not going to tear up the barrel at all. So what you're going to do is you're going to run your bore brush through your barrel and then pull it back. And what this is going to do is it's going to knock off all that carbon out of the riflings and out of the rest of the barrel. Run that through there a couple times. There's no specific number you have to do it. It's a brass brush. It's not going to tear. Next, you're going to take your patch pusher. It looks about like this. They've got some that have little loops in them. You put your little patches in there. I'm going to take me a patch. Ooh. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it. This is my barrel cleaning oil. It's the Hops number 9. It's one that I've used for a while. I've never had a problem with it. I kind of like it. You're going to put your patch right in there. And then just push her on through. Now, I will typically maybe reuse a patch one time. And what I'll do is I'll run one side through. And then I'll flip it over and use the back side to push it through a second time. And what you're going to do is you're going to keep pushing patches through, like this one's done now. And I'll get another one. And you'll keep pushing them through until the barrel's clean, which this one's actually not that bad. Now, as an alternative to that, I like using those, but on some of my more higher end rifles that I don't like running bore brushes through or something like that, I may use a patch that already has some kind of cleaner on it. So these are just patches. I actually got these free somewhere along the line. You just take these. In a 300, it'll take a full patch. In a 308, it'll take a full patch. In my 6.5, it takes the full patch. But in the 223 and the 5.56, all those, I actually have to cut these in half. And I'll use half of one. But it's the same general principle. You just put it in there, you hold it in the barrel, and you push it down. You push it out the other side. You can flip it over if you like and push it down again. That is completely your choice. Depends on how much you want to use the patches and everything else. And ones that have commercial products on them, if you want to use them 2 or 3 times on the first one, it's not going to hurt anything. You're going to use up more of the solvent and waste less. But again, 100% your choice. Now, once you get that through, I also like to take a little bit of my oil, and what I'll do, you can't see it, I'm sorry, but I've dripped some of the oil into the barrel itself. And we're going to let that run down, put it on a rag over here. And what that's going to do is that oil is going to start coating the barrel, and then we're going to run one more patch through it to basically clean off all the excess. Now my barrel is sufficiently cleaned and oiled. So now we get to restart the reassembly process. Super easy. So we're going to take some of our other oil that we had before. This one I'm using the Lucas gun oil. And we're going to take a couple drops, and we're going to put a couple drops right there where the charging handle sits, because the charging handle is also a moving part. So we want to make sure that it's well oiled. So what we can do is we can take that. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on there too, just so it's got plenty. We're going to put that in there, and we're going to run it back and forth. What that'll do is that'll move that oil around. Then, bring it out enough to where it's still going to stay. You're going to take your bolt, and you're going to put it in where the gas port is running along the charging handle. Now, if you can't get it in, because this is unfortunately a common mistake that a lot of new people make, is when you start to put it in, if your bolt is pushed forward, that little knob is there. Well, that knob will keep you from getting it in. So when you go to try to put it in, make sure the bolt is pulled out. And when you go to hit it, maybe if you hit something first and then you still can't get it in, it's because your bolt got pushed in. But it should slide in just like that, and everything locks down in place. Your bolt is nice and oiled. Your chamber is nice and oiled. And remember, your lower is nice and oiled. At this point, I like to wipe down the whole rifle. Basically, I'll take one of my rags that already had just a smidge of oil on it. I don't want a whole lot. And then I'll just wipe down the whole rifle. Every bit of it. What I'm doing is I'm wiping off any excess oil that might have got on it, but also any parts that didn't have oil on them, and making sure they get a little bit of oil, because having a dry rifle can cause it to rust. We're going to wipe off all the extra stuff. This has got a little dust on it. Alright, there's that. And then the upper, the same thing. If you haven't already wiped it down, now's a good time to just wipe the whole thing. The gun doesn't need a coat of oil, but when it's been wiped off with oil, it'll help keep it from rusting. Alright, we'll take that. We'll place our upper back on our lower, or vice versa, however you want to call it. Line up the pins and push them through. And there you have it. It is completely back together and ready to fire. At this point, you can do a function test. Open it. Take it off fire. Alright, everything seems to be functioning as it should. Alright. And there it is. There is your clean AR-15. Alright, there you go. Super simple, and now you have a clean AR-15. So you can use this for general maintenance. You can just pull apart the upper and the lower and oil it down, clean off the excess carbon. Or you can go as in-depth as pulling the bolt out and fully cleaning it. Depends on how you want to do it. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'll tell you that all of my firearms once a year will get everything pulled out, everything cleaned, everything polished, cleaned, whatever you want to call it, re-oiled and put back together. And that's at least once a year. Now, some of my other rifles that get used way more often and have a lot more rounds through them, I'll clean them more often. Especially even between large amounts, I'll pull it apart, I'll clean it, I'll oil it, and throw it back together. But at least once a year, I pull everything apart and re-clean it, just like I did today. So, that'll conclude it for today. We appreciate you watching. If you like it, like, subscribe, and share. It'll help us out. But other than that, have a good week. Bye, guys.